Hey everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast. We are recording from the fantastic Memphis, Tennessee. And I have to tell you, we are staying at the Sheraton, I think in downtown Memphis. It has been such a great experience. They have been amazing to Addiction Unlimited. They gave us a killer room to record in, so we had a nice quiet space. And I just wanted to give them a shout out because they've been awesome and helpful. And we are so grateful for that as always. Our guest today is Vance Johnson, and I'm going to let him fill it in from there because I'm not going to do him justice.
Hi there. Let me thank you so much for allowing me to be on this amazing show of yours. I don't really do a lot of podcasts, so this is the one that I was really looking forward to. And flying all the way from the East Coast to Memphis here, where Elvis Presley got famous.
That's right.
Is an honor.
The home.
My name is Vance Johnson. I'm a former Denver Bronco. I played 10 years with the great John Elway and went to 3 Super Bowls. And more importantly, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ and a recovering alcoholic addict.
Well, you're in the right place.
I am in the right place.
You fit right in.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit, of course, I'm fascinated, right? Like addiction in football, there's a ton of fascinating stuff about that. And I really get curious about, probably because I've watched too many episodes of 30 for 30, but there's a whole sort of behind the scenes, almost underground life to being an athlete, certainly on that level, you know, and kind of how people are treated. And I watched a documentary a while back. You'll probably remember it more than I will, but it was a behind the scenes of like the draft and all the things that players go through. And it was crazy to me. And it felt very inhuman. You know what I mean? Like people were being treated like a commodity. It just felt very weird to me, you know?
It's interesting you said that because when I got drafted and I had to go to the NFL draft, it was much like a commodity. And we were all, paraded through this auditorium, all these guys butt naked walking across, and they were all looking at us like we were cattle.
Yes, that's what I saw in the documentary. That's
serious?
Exactly what I saw.
I experienced it. And I was like, this is the last frontier of legalized slavery. Except they pay us a lot of money to do it.
And you know what it is? It's kind of the core of entertainment because I have dealt with it even in my podcast, even as new as I am. You know, there is a level of course, sensationalism. Like you have to set things up properly for people to be interested. Mm-hmm. But when money comes into it and there is some entertainment value, there is a certain shift in things. And for me, it's always, and also in my company, Kansas City Recovery, dealing with addiction, it's really important that I always maintain my personal connection to it and that it doesn't feel too much like business.
Right. And it leads us to the next thing you'd mentioned about this underground. Yeah. And the secrecy. And if it wasn't for social media and if it wasn't for podcasts and things and like that coming out, then I think it would still be underground. But there's so much happening with addiction in professional sports that I just thank God that I'm on the back end of it now where I can be transparent and be able to reach out to those athletes who many are suffering with addictions all over the country in every different sport to tell them, listen, I know where you're at. I've been where you're at. And there's a way out of that hell. Because we hide behind the money and the glitz and the glam and the fame and the women and the relationships. And then when the lights they turn off and all the accolades stop, that's when you start really struggling with the use. Yeah. So that's a whole nother conversation.
Do you have struggles with almost your identity, like who you are as a person when that career ends? Like I always talk about one of the hardest interventions I ever did was on a young girl. She was 22 or 23, and she had been a ballerina her whole entire life from the time she was very, very small. And she had an injury and she had to give up dancing. Right. And her whole life, that's the only thing she ever thought she was going to do. She turned to alcohol, of course, which is how she ended up in front of me. Yeah. But it was one of the most challenging cases because her level of heartbreak was so hard to get through, and her grieving because it was her whole life. It was the only thing she had ever thought she would do.
Yeah.
So, and all of a sudden she was really young and looking at her whole life that she just questioned everything.
Well, that takes me to the beginning of my life. I grew up around an alcoholic, abusive father who beat on my mother. And my only escape when I was young was sports. Mm-hmm. And when I saw my father with the affairs and the alcohol and the smelling of the marijuana, I never was going to go down that road. And so I literally disappeared in my head. And I wanted to be a pro football player and go to the Olympics. And for some reason, by the grace of God, I was able to just focus on my body and being famous one day. And so all I did was do sports. And it was my escape and became my reality until I got to the levels where people were recognizing me all over the country for being a pro athlete, for being a track star. And it became so real for me that literally the world raised me, the world cultivated me. And then when I was too old to perform anymore, they cut me off, and then I had no identity. And that leads into my addiction.
How old were you when you first realized you had a problem?
How old? 50. I was 50 when I first realized that I had a problem. But it started when I was.
So you weren't like drinking in high school and things like that?
You know, interesting enough, my first drink, I was 23 years old.
Nice.
I
was a late bloomer too.
Were you?
Yeah. I didn't drink in high school. I wasn't even interested. No I never way. Thought about it.
I saw it and I saw what it did to my friends and my teammates. I saw what it did to families. And so it was not going to be me. And so when I got drafted by the Denver Broncos, I had never had a drink. I had never smoked weed, never done drugs. I went and created this world for myself in the NFL. I had a horrible event that happened where I dropped a punt on my first game of my career, and I knew I was going to get cut. And so what did I do? I drank.
Wow.
That's what I said when I drank. Wow. I could just do this. Whenever I want to deal with issues, I could just do this. Then they introduced prescription pills. And then pills so that I could get away with having to deal with pain when I was on the field.
Right.
And then with the pills and the alcohol, I went out and I got brave and I started dating. And that's where the next incident happened. I got somebody pregnant.
Start dating in your best state of mind
in
with
my
pills
best
and
state
alcohol.
Oh my gosh.
Making your best decisions.
Oh man. You're not going to have enough time for this show today, I'll tell you. My story is so long and crazy.
I love that because you're on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And I love that you have a sense of humor about it because I think that's so important.
Oh,
If I couldn't have a healthy sense of humor about how I was, who I was, the things I did, then I would feel like I'd be overridden with that guilt and shame.
Right.
And I'm really grateful that hasn't been my experience in my sobriety. Like I could really separate who I was as a drinking person is an entirely different human to who I am as a sober person.
Well, you and I have had a chance to spend some time together. And just like I told you the other day, that you're so transparent and you're so honest that you were born to be and do what you do. And unfortunately, you had to go the hard road to get there. But in your sobriety, you became the person that's going to be the icon that people are going to look at and say, look at her. She's happy. She can do it. I need to listen to her and break stigma.
Well, it's so weird. I don't know why. And we were talking about this. My thing is to break stigma of sobriety. Yep. There's nothing weird about being a sober person. It's
nothing.
Like there's nothing weird about it.
I bet you're like me. You like walking around and telling people, I'm sober.
I love it. I love it because I'm just regular.
Yes.
I'm just a regular person living a regular life. Right. I'm probably a little more driven than a lot of people and I'm a workaholic, and things like that. But I'm just a regular person and I happen to be sober.
Yeah.
And I still have a great personality. I have the most phenomenal life. I had a pretty phenomenal life when I was drinking too, but I spent so much time in my drinking life talking about all the things I ted to do and never actually doing them.
Right.
In my sober life, I've gotten to do all that stuff. Yeah. I'm a scuba diver. I've been all over the world diving. I've taken amazing trips. I love to travel. My business partner, I'm a Gemini, and my business partner sent me a thing because my birthday was last month that said something about Geminis. If traveling were free, you'd never see us again. I was like, that's the truth. I'd be out of here.
Hey, you mentioned the drinking part. Drinking is good until it's not good anymore.
Until it's not good anymore, yeah.
And that's exactly what happens to a lot of people, your listeners right now. There's someone that is at that point. And that's the reason why I'm so glad that you do what you do, because you're going to break stigma and offer hope to people who know they've hit that wall where it's time to make a change now in their life.
Yeah. Well, it's weird to think that there's this belief in the world that you can't have an enjoyable life if you're sober.
Right.
Like you can't go to a football game
Yeah.
at a stadium and have fun if you're not drinking.
Yeah.
You know, you can still tailgate with all your friends and cook food sober.
I've actually been doing that now that I am clean.
You can still do all the same things. But yeah, it's just strange to me. I think and I actually believe it's made me a stronger person because I've had to learn how to really sit in my feelings and get through them. Like I have to troubleshoot my life and figure it out because I don't have an escape now.
Every day.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. There's a strength in sobriety that's pretty impressive.
That's right. Well, during the height of my addiction, especially when I was in the NFL and I did not know I was an addict, I used to wake up in the morning, I used to perform, and I used to sleep. And unfortunately, I used to navigate relationships. And throughout my career in the NFL, I was married several times. And when I knew I couldn't navigate relationships, I would get a divorce because I grew up not knowing how to have a successful relationship. I thought I was a believer in my faith in Jesus, but I was just really believing in myself. I was a horrible father. I was making babies just because I was having sex without protection. And all of it was because of what I was living in and my addiction, thinking because I was functional, highly functional, making touchdowns and going to Super Bowls, that there was not a problem.
Right. Okay, let's go back to you were 50 when you realized you had a problem.
Yeah.
I don't know how old you are now, but that couldn't have been very long ago.
It wasn't very long ago.
You're not very old.
So I had my own restaurant like every athlete wants to. My oldest son came to spend some time with me. He loved Dad. And my kids were starting to be more involved in my life because I was old enough now that I was slowing down just a little bit. Not in my addiction, but I was slowing down as a partier. My kid came to spend time with me. I got him a house and a car and a motorcycle. He blew the engine out of his motorcycle. He was trying to reach me, to borrow my car rather, and he couldn't reach me because I was either chasing or using, having sex, doing something high. And so my son took his motorcycle across the mountain to see his mother, who father had just died of cancer. She was my first wife. And that morning, or that evening rather, he drove home and he got hit by a drunk driver and he got killed. And when I got the news about my son being killed, for the next 2 years, all I did was drink and use until I used myself literally into a coma.
Wow.
Yeah. I wish you could show that photo on this podcast.
Wow.
Because it is quite a sight to see me laying there with tubes hanging out of me, with tubes hanging out of my penis so I can urine, with tubes hanging in my body so they can feed me. Right. And then they would have to come in after I woke up after 28 days and roll me over just to clean the poop off of a 50-year-old.
Right.
Now, cleaning poop off of a 2-year-old is different.
Right.
A 50-year-old?
A 2-year-old's a little more expected.
A little more expected, but a 50-year-old, that's a lot of cleaning to do.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even understand what I had gone through in my life that put me in this position. But I was there, and I was facing death literally.
Yeah. And you have a picture?
My sister came because they didn't tell the fans, but my family members came to say their goodbyes. And my sister took a deathbed picture of me when she flew back to the Northeast. And I got a hold of it after I had left treatment. But it was quite a ride. And I'll tell you, I even thought after I got out of that bed and I went back to my mom and dad's house, I was living in a guest bedroom, that I didn't know how this former professional athlete ended up like this. And I started to blame game. I started blaming my mother for staying with my dad. I started blaming my father for all the crap that I had to experience as a child. It was everyone's fault except mine.
Except yours,
It was his fault that I was married 7 times. Mm-hmm. It was his fault that I lost everything. It was his fault because of what I saw as a child. Not knowing that, you know what? You're worse than your father, dude.
Oh, that's so humbling too. How long were you in the hospital?
I was in the hospital for 28 days.
So what did you think when you were coming out of the hospital? Like, were you thinking, okay, now I have to be a sober person?
No, I thought I needed to go back and just act like I did when I was a kid. I needed to work out harder, and I needed to have focus on goals and plans to keep me busy.
So you had to refocus.
I had to refocus.
Not get sober, but refocus.
Right. And so I didn't drink because it was doing some damage to me on the inside. So I felt like I needed to clean up a little bit and I needed to heal up a little bit. So for about 4 or 5 months, I didn't drink. I went golfing and I had a Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Ah.
That was yummy.
They are yummy.
And I felt like, man, I could just do this once in a while. And then I started having a little bit of Corona.
Disclaimer, regular lemonade is yummy too.
Exactly. That's right. Then I started drinking Corona. Then I started having shots and I felt like I could navigate it. And all of a sudden, it's like I was off to the races again. I'm drinking bottles of vodka. I'm back to cursing my father. I'm picking him up and carrying him through my restaurant, throwing him on the ground in front of the patrons, screaming at my mother for being with him again, threatening to kill my dad. I got in an argument with my father one time, and if it wasn't for me being in front of a doorway, he would have gotten his gun and shot me. I happened to record that conversation because I wanted to show him what kind of jerk he was. And that very next morning, I was listening to the recording so I could play it for him and say, this is the type of jerk you are when you drink. And I was drinking too, by the way. And I heard him say, this is not the son that I raised. You need to go get help and never come back here again. And that's when all of a sudden I'm driving through this canyon, drunk, crying, screaming out to God, begging him to help me because I couldn't fight this disease that now I realized that I had. And I heard a voice inside of my head tell me that I needed to get help and I needed to be alone with him.
Right.
And so by that time, my 7th ex-wife reached out to the NFL, called the NFL. They called a drug and alcohol rehab facility in Florida where there was another former professional athlete, Randy Grimes, who played 10 years with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He reached out to me, and for a couple, 2 or 3 months, I lied to him until I heard the voice again. And I woke up that morning and I called him and said, I'm ready, man. And I grabbed my Bible. I told my parents where I was going, and I got on the airplane and headed out to Florida. Nice. But when I got there, that was a whole new story. Because I was around a whole bunch of drug addicts and alcoholics.
Yeah.
I was a pro football player. I didn't think I should be there. I was literally around 100 guys who were all addicts and alcoholics. And I was like, I'm not like them. I want to go to the beach.
Wait, in treatment?
In treatment.
Okay.
I said, I don't want to be here. I'm a pro ball player. I want to go to the beach. I want to drink virgin pina coladas, and I want to watch girls play volleyball. So I wouldn't be a part of the community.
That's a hell of a plan.
That's a hell of a plan, right? I wasn't doing it on my terms like we all do. So I'm walking around outside the gate. I wouldn't be involved in the community. I didn't want to hear what the therapist had to say. I didn't want to hear guys. And all of a sudden, I promise you, I looked across the fence and I saw a humongous cross on top of a church. And I heard the voice again that told me, no, this is where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Go
back in and get help. And so I walked back in and I sat down and I started to listen. And I started to hear my story and all these young men that were struggling with their addictions. I start hearing about the domestic issues they grew up in and around. I start hearing about the underlying issues. I start hearing about the blame game. I start hearing that we were drinking so that we could cope and deal with life.
Right.
And I heard my story.
Yeah.
And that's when I start getting on my knees and I start praying and I start realizing that this was God's whole purpose for me, was so I could have a mighty fall, so that once I got out of there, I could have a platform and offer hope and break stigma for every single person that's dying in this country who's suffering with an addiction.
Amen.
This is what
that.
I do.
Yes. And I think there are, like I always say, I feel like addicted people are kind of the chosen ones.
Yes.
Because sobriety is not for sissies.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's not.
It is a challenge.
Yes,
you know, I'm a full-time job.
Yeah.
My brain is a full-time job.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot to manage there on a daily basis.
You have to change your whole thought process. Everything about you have to change because your mind is completely screwed up.
So you're sitting in treatment and you're rationalizing that you're different from everybody because you're a pro ball player.
Mm-hmm.
But every other person that's not a pro ball player is sitting there rationalizing how they're different from everybody in the room for whatever their reasons are.
That's exactly right.
So it's another one of those things where so many of us are exactly the same, even though our details are different, our backgrounds are different or whatever. Right. But there's a personality with addiction.
It's all the
that
same
is very
story.
Much the same. Yeah.
My gosh, the personality is the same. And there's nothing different. I came from obviously wealth and being famous. Someone else comes from the street and being homeless. But when we talk about the issue, the problem, it's all the exact same thing. We're trying to cope. And that's the reason why we used.
Right.
And so what are we going to do about it?
And the underlying feelings that we have through all of those struggles are the same.
All the same.
Yeah. And that's where you really connect. Like addicted people connect in a different way with one another than we do with other people, because there is a certain survivorship that we have.
Yes,
we have survived a certain thing that other people will not understand on the same level.
That's right.
So we do connect. But yeah, it's just fascinating how our rationalizations are all different, but it's present in so many people.
Yes, it is. And that's why it's also important for me to reach out to our African American and minority communities to let them know, you might feel like you're less than or inferior out there in the real world just trying to survive. But when it comes to addiction, it's all the same thing.
Yeah,
and let's stop being so segregated when it comes to treatment.
Yeah.
We all suffer. Let's all get help. Let's break stigma and let's start communicating. Let's stop
and
the chatter.
There's a lot of similarities in that stuff too with being a woman.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? Like I walk into an AA meeting and I am drastically outnumbered. Mm-hmm. I have I have different concerns in the world. I have to be mindful of my safety and things like that wherever I go. Like, it's just a little bit different. It's just a different arena.
I feel sorry for women because a number of housewives or women that are just regular working women, working class, they're afraid because they have families, they have children, and they don't want anyone to know. So they're in the closet about it.
Yeah.
So, whether you're Black, white, Hispanic, Mexican, female, or addiction is taking over this country.
But if we continue to do that work of breaking down the stigma of sobriety, then it doesn't seem so weird to people.
Right.
And I get it on a lot of different levels. I get it. It's the only illness that is so unpredictable that, I've been sober 12 and a half years, but I could decide this afternoon to go drink for some reason.
And so people, they sit in shame and guilt and they're scared.
And people don't trust us.
Right.
Because they never know when the other shoe is going to drop, so to speak.
Well, you can trust me because I'm really excited and I love my sobriety. I own my sobriety.
Me too.
And this leads me into my next thing. I'm a Christian and I know that you're not going to find God in a drug and alcohol rehab facility. But if you are a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, then you'll start to be able to hear your pastors and understand that he died and paid the whole price for you to be able to be clean. And when he died, he sent the Holy Spirit to dwell in you, and light and dark cannot commingle. And so this light that's in me now, if the cup poureth over, that means it's always pouring in me, and there's no room for that addiction to come. Now, don't get me wrong. I could cut it off and step back out in myself.
Sure.
I can step back out in my flesh. I can step back out and start being attracted to and start having affairs and cheating and meeting women, which is going to be a trigger for me to relapse.
Right.
I can go back and start doing the blame game and blaming my father or everyone else for all my problems. Or I can be responsible and say, listen, this is my journey for the rest of my life is to offer hope to people and let them know as long as you stay on that right path, then you're going to stay sober forever. And I'm not afraid of losing my sobriety. And I'm so proud of it that it's the thing that I'm most proud of in my life. I went to the Super Bowl 3 times. I won the world championship. I won the NCAA championship in long jump. I got the gold medal in the Pan American Games, but I have never been so proud of an award than what I have in sobriety.
Yeah.
And I wear it everywhere I go.
Yeah. I love that. There's a lot to be proud of. You and I were talking about this yesterday, I think, and I said, I am very dedicated to my mental health.
Yes.
I'm very dedicated to making sure that I practice what I preach, first and foremost, and also that I'm doing the things that I know work for me to keep my head in a good place so that I can stay strong. And I always tell the guys at my sober living or clients, whoever, I'm like, I have to do things on a daily basis to feed my sober part and make it as strong as possible. So when something comes out of left field and I'm challenged, or maybe I think of a drink or something, my sober part has to be strong enough to defend me and to fight that off.
Absolutely.
So I have to work on that.
Yeah.
That is a daily practice.
That's exactly right.
And in some ways that's really small, right? But I am very dedicated to it and making sure I do those things for myself.
Well, I can tell this is what you live and this is what you do. And just like I told you the other day, how you are so transparent in this, and you don't do this for lucre or money like a lot of people are doing, which is a whole nother podcast we can talk about what's happening in the industry, especially in South Florida. But there are accredited facilities out there. The key thing, though, is do you want help? And are you willing to listen to somebody else and know that everything you've been doing for a lifetime has been wrong?
And willing is the key word there.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what saved me when I first walked in the rooms of AA, right? I was 7 days sober when I finally went in.
Yeah.
I had been in a car accident, so I was a little banged up. So I had to rest for a while before I could actually go to a meeting. But I think that is the biggest piece for me, is that I had no barriers against.
Yeah.
I didn't sit there and try to figure out why I didn't belong there. I knew I belonged. Mm-hmm. And I was just absolutely willing to listen and to do what I was told. It was very logical to me that people sitting in that room had been sober a long time. Yeah. So it just made sense I would follow their lead. Right? Clearly, I didn't know what I was doing, but that willingness it's just absolutely the key to all of it. That's because you also, on the other side, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable and not drink or use drugs.
That's right.
You have to be willing to do things in a different way than you've done before.
Absolutely. And it's ironic you mentioned that, because I went to church when I first wanted to get clean, and I thought that they were going to pray this out of me. It didn't work. I thought the pastor could lay hands on me. It didn't work. I thought that I could go to an AA meeting, and it didn't work. I started finding myself actually leaving and drinking or drinking right before I went so I could just keep getting another white chip. Right. But I was not willing to accept that I had a problem. and I wasn't willing to listen. And it was always, again, like about the blame game. And it really took a miracle for me to realize that this problem that I had was eventually going to be a gift so that I can offer hope to people.
Yeah, mine was the realization that I could hurt somebody else. Like, I didn't care about hurting me.
Right.
But after my car accident, it was this like, oh my gosh, I could have hurt somebody else. And that was never my intention. Right? I would never want to hurt another person. Okay. I didn't care if I hurt me. Yeah. You know, I was suffering anyway. Right. So, yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was that realization that, holy crap, it isn't just about me. It was just that moment of realizing that it wasn't only me that I was hurting, that there was this whole outside world that really was not safe with me doing what I was doing.
That's awesome to hear that was your aha moment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
It was horrible. But there was also a piece of faith in that too, because my accident was the second time that I really was walking away from a situation that I shouldn't have walked away from. Yeah. And I was the only person hurt in my accident, but I hit somebody at 70 miles an hour. I hit another car on the freeway. Yeah. So I probably should have been more hurt than I was, really. And I had another situation a couple of years prior to that I probably shouldn't have survived. So there was a piece of faith in that, standing on the side of the freeway and just looking at all that wreckage. And I was like, you know, there must be some other plan for me, because I was trying every day to die.
You know, it's interesting.
And I just wouldn't die. And I was like, there must be something else I'm supposed to do, because this is not working out.
Then you make the Bible true, because I don't know if it's Ecclesiastes or if it's Ezekiel 17, that it says, why die before your time? And there is grace and mercy on you, because there was a journey. And you know what? You woke up and here you are now. That's saving lives.
That's right.
So that is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was good to have the moment of realizing that there could be a journey.
Yeah.
Because,
absolutely.
Because I always just thought I would be dead. Yeah. I never thought I would live to be an older person. I thought I would be dead by 40.
That's where I was heading
I'm 46 now, you know, but I never thought I would live that long. So I didn't have any plans.
Right.
I didn't have any long-term plans.
Absolutely. I thought once I made to the NFL and, you know, failed suicide attempts and all the drunk driving and getting pulled over but not having to go to jail, I thought that I reached the pinnacle of life and it wasn't worth living anymore.
Oh, man, when we don't have those consequences too, because I had a bunch of times, probably 4 or 5 times, that I got pulled over and I got let go for one reason or another. Yeah. And not having any consequences really was positive reinforcement to me. So all it did to me was go, I can get away with it, you know? Yeah. So I just kept going. And I have that conversation with families all the time now where it's like, listen, those consequences are so important. I have to feel the consequences of my actions.
Yes, you do.
If I don't feel those consequences, I don't have any motivation to change.
Interesting enough, and that's exactly what I tell my younger kids. I adopted a couple of kids just a few years ago, and I let them know that there are consequences for every decision you make. I'm very transparent with them about my addiction and my walk and what dad does now. And I'm trying to reestablish relationships with my older children who blame their lives on me, which I don't blame them.
Right.
And I pray for them and hopefully things will turn around.
Yeah, we earn a lot of that.
Don't we?
We earn a lot of that.
We sure do.
But you know what? It's all fixable as long as I'm sober.
It's all fixable, yeah. But I put it in God's hands. I let him restore those relationships.
But I have to make the decision every day. If I want to convince people that I'm a different person, then I have to make decisions every day to prove that I'm a different person.
You have to live it, don't you?
That's right.
That's exactly right.
I can't tell you I'm different now and you should believe me then go back to making the same choices I used to make. So
I told one of my sons the same thing. I told one of my boys, I said, son, Dad's been such a horrible father. Let me prove to you that I can be a good dad. Don't believe me. Let me prove it to you.
And that's living amends, which is one of my favorite things in the world. You know, Steps I talk about my personal code of conduct, right? I have a personal code of conduct that I try to follow in my life, in my daily decision making and just how I am in the world. And I really base my life on service, love, and gratitude. Like that's it for me.
That's right.
You know, I want to be of service to as many people as I can. I want to give as much love in a day as I can, and because there's not enough of it and there's not enough going around and there aren't enough people giving love, and there's a lot of hateful stuff happening and people not being very nice to each other.
Preach it, girl. Preach it. She's talking about love. I'm a fan of Jesus Christ too. I know you're not calling yourself a Christian, but you got to be, but talk about love.
Well, I come from a different angle. A lot of the beliefs and principles are the same.
I understand.
But yeah, it is. I mean, love is so important. And just I know for me, when I think about the person I want to be in the world and I think about the effect that I want to have on people when they walk away from me, how do I want them to feel?
Mm-hmm.
What do I want to bring to the table?
Right.
And I want that to be good.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody to walk away from me going, oh my God, I'm so glad to get away from her. I want somebody to walk away going, man, that was awesome.
Yeah, I had enough of that in my past. I was always pretending like I was somebody that I wasn't. And that's the reason why I tell everyone now, transparency and walking the walk is important.
It's so important. Yeah. I love that. And amends were my favorite part of the steps too.
8
that
and
was
9.
the most rewarding piece for me. It was the most empowering piece for me.
Mm-hmm.
When I did 9 and making my amends, obviously in person to most people, I remember having this moment because not all of those amends went well.
Right.
Of course not. Yeah. You don't always get a positive response. And I remember thinking I was like, wow. If I can do this, if I can sit down and have these conversations and be this honest about what a piece of garbage I was, if I can do this, I can do anything.
Absolutely.
Because that does not feel good.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, talk about humbling.
That's exactly right. I was in a church and because I've been married 7 times. So I was in a church in Colorado with 1,800 people making an amends. I stood in front of the whole church congregation. I said, listen, guys, my ex-wives won't talk to me. But I know somebody in this audience knows them because they're all here in Colorado. And you guys also know my children. And I want you to tell my ex-wives that it was all my fault. And I'm so sorry that I broke their hearts and I destroyed our children's futures. And I got on my knees and I started crying and asked them, begged them for forgiveness. And then I apologized to the community for being a horrible role model to their kids who looked up to me during my career. Because making amends is what it was all about for me. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. We have something else in common.
Yeah. It was just so empowering to me. It really was. It gave me sort of an inner strength where I just felt like I could face anything.
Absolutely.
And some people talk about having that with 4 and 5, steps 4 and 5. Mm-hmm. I didn't have that experience, but I had it with 8 and 9. And that's when things really shifted for me. And I think my level of commitment, I never questioned my commitment to my sobriety. I was pretty sure from day one, I just didn't want to drink anymore.
Right.
That obsession was lifted from me pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. I didn't think about drinking. I knew it wasn't my solution. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to get away from it. Yeah. And I wanted to learn how to be a person that didn't need it. That's what I wanted. Yeah. So it was never about not drinking for me because I felt pretty confident from day one that I wasn't going to drink. I didn't want to anymore. Right. But I had to learn how to be a different person.
Yeah. And it's so interesting you said that. And this kind of leads me to where I try to help people out because I'm so overwhelming with my walk and my Christianity. I try to tell everyone, listen, you don't have to be a Christian to get sober. No. There are many different paths and ways to have and sustain sobriety for a lifetime. You just have to not want it anymore. It's just my choice, and my walk has to do with my salvation. And it's such a subtle thing, but once you decide that you're done, then all you have to do is have a plan and keep to that plan, and you're going to stay sober for the rest of your life. And now it's about being proud of that and standing out and telling everyone, I'm sober. Yeah. And I can help you be sober too if you're done doing what you do.
And so much of the world tells me that I shouldn't feel great about being sober, but I feel like we're kind of the coolest people.
I think so too. And the world's a lie anyway. Look at the whole world is suffering with addiction. Come on. Everyone's hiding behind it. They say there's 25 million, but everyone is.
I get a little irritated with this opiate situation right now. Yeah. Obviously, it's terrible. Mm-hmm. It's a horrible situation to be in. What I wonder, though, is because I'm an alcoholic, I never did drugs. So I wonder, why does nobody care about the alcoholics that have been doing this for centuries?
Well, I think because alcohol has been legal for centuries. And it's been okay for people to drink, and people can hide behind it, and they have forever.
And it's so socially acceptable. And they make millions.
That's right.
Probably billions of dollars off that industry.
You don't want to lose your show, though, so let's leave.
But we draw. I mean,
let's keep it real,
think about hospital and emergency room costs, healthcare costs.
Oh, yeah.
Think about the amount of people that die every year because of alcohol-related illness. Absolutely. Right? And what it does to our bodies.
Way more than drugs.
How much do we crash and kill innocent people? Yeah. Every day. Yeah. And it just frustrates me that now this opiate crisis is in all the headlines. And I'm like, dude, this has been going on forever.
Yeah, it has been.
It's not just opiates.
That's right.
This has been going on forever.
Opening the eyes up to the reality of what's happening. And I also think because the opiates are killing kids.
Yes.
Right. And they're
well, and
dying.
it's happening much faster.
Way
There's
faster.
no question
Right.
that those prescription pills, it's a fast track through the addiction process,
Yeah.
right? Where it took me years to really run through the process of becoming addicted. Yeah. I mean, opiates for sure. It's a fast track. So it is, I mean, it is a crisis. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I just think as a whole, addiction is addiction.
Right. Now, what are we going to do about it?
Well, I'm trying to do a lot through this podcast.
Right. Yes, you are.
And just getting out the message, you know, that there's nothing wrong with being sober. There's nothing weird about being sober.
Nothing at all.
This is a phenomenal life as a sober person. There's nothing weird about the 12 steps or AA. There's nothing weird about finding your faith in church. There's nothing weird about any of it, right? Like it is much better to me to be a really good person and to play an active role in the person that I am and the life that I have, rather than being who I used to be, which was just kind of a hot mess.
Right. And the other thing we need to do is start reaching out to these families and start educating them and start taking it back into the home and letting the parents know, listen, if you're allowing your children to just live on social media, to have their cell phones and their iPads at 2 and 3 and 4 years old, then the world is starting to raise them up and not you. Let's take our kids back and start showing them who we are and start showing them their values and who they are in my walk with their Christianity, and letting them know that you don't have to go stimulate by using drugs or alcohol or having these fake social media pages where you're making these selfies. And then when you want to commit suicide because no one's treating you good on Snapchat, I don't think you have enough time on your radio show.
It's a strange world
It's a
today.
strange world.
It really is.
It is.
But nobody has any coping skills, you know, and I see this in my sober living because obviously we get a lot of 20-somethings and some very, very young. And their coping skills are just lacking. I was a very independent young person. I was pretty self-sufficient, very young. But even I crack up like when I have to fix things around one of the houses because I'm kind of a do-it-yourselfer. If I can do it myself, I'm not going to pay somebody to do it. Right. So like I had to do some plumbing stuff a few weeks ago. And of course, I posted pictures on my Facebook because now I'm a master plumber. But I had to. But it's so funny. Like all these guys are standing around going, how do you know how to do that? Yeah. I'm like, how do you not? It's YouTube. You Google it and you YouTube it.
That's true.
Like there's nothing you can't know.
A lot of these kids also grew up really entitled. And where is it not
very
okay?
Much so.
Where is it not okay to say that you lose? Because there's no losers anymore. When you're a kid, if you lose, you still get a trophy.
Oh, I love this. So one of my favorite entrepreneurs is Gary Vaynerchuk. He's one of my favorite people in the world. And he's vibrant and he's fun to listen to. He's a little abrasive. He cusses a lot, which I appreciate. I feel like it just makes him a little more human. But he's wildly successful and he's incredible. His message is incredible. And he talks about his kids who are very young. Yeah. And he talks about playing games with them. I think he was talking about playing basketball with his son. He is like, he will never score on me. Because
it's okay to lose.
The same thing. It's okay to lose.
Absolutely.
Like you have to learn, like you work harder. If you want to win, you work harder.
That's
like
exactly
it's just such a cool message. But I think you're right. It is. And I think what baffles me is like in that situation where I'm doing the plumbing or whatever, what baffles me is that it's almost like they don't even know how to troubleshoot to figure it out.
No, they don't.
Like they'll just stop and go, I don't know what to do.
Well, again, it's
and I'm like, okay, well, then you figure it out. Like start asking questions. One thing just leads you to the next thing. But it's like they freeze.
Well, again, it's the way they were raised. And all of a sudden they get old enough now where these decisions and consequences they have to face. And when they lose, they go take opioids so they can cope.
Right.
And then they die.
Or drink. Or smoke pot.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then it becomes the solution.
That's right.
Which for me, when I got sober, that's the piece I was so clear on, is that it was no longer my solution. Mm-hmm. It had nothing to offer me.
Right.
It didn't take care of anything. It didn't handle my problems.
It made a big mess.
It made them worse, right? And it made me feel worse.
That's right.
So it's like I had to just figure out how to get through it and how to cope with stuff and how to feel good about it.
And after you get clean, too, people shouldn't hold themselves in condemnation for the things that they did in their past. And they should allow other people to come to them and make them feel guilty about the hell that they raised when they were using. I've got friends now, just the other night, 2 guys reached out to me that were in parking lots. One was in a parking lot. The other one had left home because they said that my girlfriend and my wife is abusing the crap out of me because she's telling me how bad I was when I used to use. Right. And so here I am sober now. Vance, how do I cope with it? I said, you call me. So I can help you walk through this thing.
Right.
Because you're not going to lose your sobriety over this.
Well, and what a beautiful thing, too, because we never have to do any of this alone.
Right. That's right.
We have a
Great
built-in tribe,
That's
a
right.
built-in community. Everywhere I go in the world,
Yeah.
I have a community.
Just being in your show has keep me sober again today.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love this too, that I feel like there is some growth in these huge congregations. So obviously I live in Kansas City and there is no shortage of churches.
Wait a second, Kansas City, aren't the Chiefs there? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off subject.
I shouldn't have said
We're
that.
talking about football. I thought we were talking about being sober. Kansas City. Cut.
Cut.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh gosh. All right, come back to me. So I feel like there's this growth in pastors being honest about their sobriety.
Right.
And there are a couple of mega churches in Kansas City where the leadership of those churches are sober people and they talk about it. And I love, love, love that because it's reaching so many more people.
That's right. Well, you make sure you reach out to them and let them know that I'm available to come talk to their
I will. I was thinking about that yesterday, actually.
Absolutely.
Yes,
because
I will do
there's
that.
a large Christian base, many brothers and sisters who believe are suffering with all different types of addictions, whether it's pornography or alcohol or drugs.
Yes.
And they're afraid and they hide behind it.
Yes.
Instead of saying, listen, I have a problem. Can you help me out of it? So these leaders, like you said, with the pastors being transparent about it is going to start bringing change.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And they're doing alternative programming too within the church where it's church-based. And it addresses all addictions, right? Not like AA or NA where we have that singleness of purpose.
Right.
For those of you that don't know, singleness of purpose just means when you're in AA, you talk about alcoholism. When you're in NA, you talk about drugs. Right. And that's just because there are people like me. I was just an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I never did drugs. So it would be uncomfortable to go to an AA meeting if everybody was talking about their drug use.
Right.
So we just have that singleness of purpose. But I love the groups. I actually do a recovery group at one of my sober homes. Every Wednesday night, that's just recovery.
Right.
Regardless of what your addiction is, it's like everybody coming together. And that's what I'm seeing in a lot of the churches.
Yeah, the church that I spoke at there in Colorado actually has a Thursday and now a Tuesday group called Road to Recovery because there's a large community within the church itself that's suffering with all types of addictions.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so this is my favorite question I ask everybody. What is your favorite thing about being a sober person?
My favorite thing about being a sober person is that I can share truth, that I can be honest, that I stand in front of who I am every single day and talk about my issues with my past addictions, who I am now in my walk with Jesus Christ. And I'm a great father. I'm a great husband. And I'm finding out that it's all really a lot of hard work.
Yeah,
but I love it. And so I know my purpose. And my whole purpose for being in 3 Super Bowls and having a mighty fall is so I can stand up and talk about truth in sobriety. I live it.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah. Well, we could easily talk forever. I'm so grateful that we have gotten to meet and spend some time together. And I hope our paths continue to cross. I think we can do some great work.
We don't have a choice.
And thank you so much just for your honesty and for being so candid about your story and for reaching out to people and helping people. It's just so important. I feel like we have a greater responsibility as people that are willing to be open. To me, that means my responsibility is even bigger to reach as many people as I can because I'm willing to do it.
That's right. We do. And I sure appreciate it. And, for your listeners, please, if you have anyone or if you want to ever reach out, then find me on Facebook, Vance Johnson. Or if you're looking for treatment, you can look me up or just contact our facility at futuresrecoveryhealthcare.com. Or give us a call and we'll lead you to that right place. And I'm so excited about it because that's all I want to do is get people into treatment.
Yeah. And it's good for people to know there are resources too. I always talk about, I hate it that people have to choose treatment centers from Google.
Right.
Like that's really hard. And I just want people to know, like you can call professionals and ask for some guidance in choosing treatment centers too. And there's a ton of us that are happy to help figure those things out.
And you can go on my website, which is vanceinspires.com. And we'll find you an accredited place. Again, if you can't go to our facility, there's somewhere you can get your loved one into. So reach out to me.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.